Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here, and today we are doing yet another Meet the Player episode. And today I am with Arcade Hell, who I've known you through comments and things on my videos here and there for the last while, but I was super stoked to see that you had started your own journey in terms of YouTube just recently. So welcome, Arcade Hell, or Eric. I'm not
Please
sure
call
if you.
me Eric.
Okay, yeah. I'm never quite sure which name to use, so I never want to assume. But yeah, so we're
Yeah,
we're chatting with Eric today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on, man. This is
yeah, no,
really
yeah.
an honor. It's so cool.
Awesome. Well, you have some. I think before we even get into the questions and stuff like that, you have some exciting news from today. A certain game was cleared, and I think that's worth sharing, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Yeah. I got my Mushihime Sama Novice Original clear, which was really fun.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. But it's crazy because some people they think that, oh, novice modes, like it's like too easy, this and that. And yeah, for some people it might be the case, but there are certain games where the novice mode is just as intense when you're not as familiar with the game.
Yeah, I'm a newbie,
Honestly,
so
that's a huge accomplishment. So huge congrats
thank
on
you.
that, man.
Thank you. That's where I'm at. That's where my skill is. The novice mode was a hard clear for me, but I
Yeah,
got it. Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So I think to get to know you a little bit, I have a few questions here. So I will just jump into the first one. None of these have to be in a specific order, but I'll just name off some of them. So anyway, what was the first shmup you played, and how did you then get into the genre?
Okay, so the first shmup I ever played, it was Raiden 2 on an arcade cab as a kid at a pizza shop. But I
Nice.
didn't know what a shmup was back
Mm-hmm.
then, so uh, I don't know. It totally counts. That's my first shmup, but that's not what got me into the genre. What got me into the genre was then later um, I picked up Jamestown in college as just a co-op game to play with friends. I
Mm-hmm.
probably played it for like an hour in college, and then right before I had my daughter, earlier in let's say it was June or May of last year,
Mm-hmm.
2022, I was visiting with a buddy. And I was like, oh, let's play some Jamestown, like just to have a couch co-op game to play. And we beat every level except for stage 5, Croatoa.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I was like, I gotta beat that stage. I'm gonna just play this thing solo. But it was kicking my butt. So then I started looking up YouTube videos on how to clear it, and the algorithm just started recommending me all these other shmup videos. So I found Electric Underground, Shmup Junkie, and your channel. And then I was like, holy crap, this is like a whole genre of games, and like everybody's really good at them, and this is sick. So I started watching videos, and I got really into it because, and into arcade games generally, but shmups especially, just because like they're really cool. Like the music is good, the graphics are good, the gameplay is solid. It's super dense. I get bored with single player games, so these are awesome though. Like I love these games, so I'm really into them.
Yeah, I love it. One thing I find so fascinating is that any given game is anywhere from 15 to 40 minutes, like average of 20 to 30 or whatever. But the
Hmm.
amount of learning and the amount of hours that go into a 15-minute run or a 20-minute run before you finally get that first clear, let alone anything else you want to do in the game after the fact. It just blows me away how much you can invest into a single short game. It's just incredible. Um,
It reminds me a lot of like racing because in racing you'll play the same course over and over, just trying to shave seconds off
yeah,
of
for
your
sure.
time. And I find myself, it's the same thing with shmups. I'm just trying to get further and further and be more stylish and use less resources and play better on the same little 5 stage course or how many ever stages are
Yeah.
in the shmup that I'm playing.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. I've never thought of it that way, but that is a really cool example to give.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we kind of just touched on some of the stuff that gripped you, but was there like one main thing with all of these games that just had you feeling like, wow, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I'm playing these, because I experienced this one thing in these games and nothing else offers that. Or was it kind of just a mixture of everything?
I mean, it was when I got into Jamestown, I think the biggest thing was the difficulty of it. You know, it was so obvious that the way that game, I think, does such an excellent job of introducing someone to the genre, because every time you play, you can't use more than 3 credits. And when you're starting out, you're playing every stage with 3 credits, and it's probably going to take you that many credits to clear a stage if you're new to the genre. And then also, it only allows you to advance if you're playing at a certain difficulty. You can't play the later stages at at the easier difficulties. So it's just kind of shepherding you towards the correct way to play. And then you unlock a gauntlet mode where you play all the stages back to back, but you can still only use 3 credits. And it's like, okay, yeah, you gotta really invest some time and get some skills to be able to do this now. And then I learned about, getting 1 credit clears, and it's like, that's a real challenge. And like, what a god you would have to be to play an arcade game and just beat a game in 1 freaking quarter. Man, like, if somebody did that as a kid, walked up to a cab and did that, I would be blown away. I would be like on my knees bowing down to this dude. So I think that like what we're all, what we're trying to do as shmup players or arcade players now is just like out of this world skillful. It's super cool. So that really draws me to it, because I come from a background of playing a lot of competitive games, and I've never been great at any sort of video game, but PvP, like FPS sort of stuff is really my bread and butter growing up. And now I found a single player game that requires like just as much thoughtfulness and is just as dense. So I really dig it. That's the primary thing. Then from there, it's like I love all the visual design behind these games. Like, the graphics are all so cool, and like especially some of these old these Genesis games, or not Saturn games, the old Sega Saturn games. I never played a Sega Saturn. I don't even know if that was in America, because I never met anyone that had a Saturn. But I think the graphics from that era are really great, and like the Neo Geo style graphics too.
Yeah, sure.
I was a big Metal Slug fan as a kid.
I've never actually played those, but they do look wicked. Like just the pixel art alone is mind-boggling in those games. And I think a bunch of the same people. I don't recall which came first. If In the Hunt, which is like kind of like a submarine arcade shooter, but I know
game looks so much like Metal Slug to me.
Yeah, like I think a handful of the same art people were on that game as well, so it's like no surprise, because that game In the Hunt is just over the top detailed. It's insane, absolutely insane.
Yeah, super cool. Hey, give me 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
I gotta let this cat out of here. Okay, I apologize for that.
It's all good.
Hopefully he doesn't want back in.
Man, I'm never doing a chat with this guy again.
Oh man.
Okay, let me just check what else is on my list here. Yeah, so just I think in general, I would love to know what your experience has been so far. Like obviously that's a loaded question, because there's going to be like ridiculous amounts of ups and downs, but I would just love to hear a little bit about like what you've gone through on a personal level, like emotionally, mentally, that kind of stuff. Because I think what we're going to be leaning into is just kind of the mindset stuff, which I think everyone can kind of share a little bit about that sort of thing, since it does really touch every person in a different way when you tackle these games.
Yeah, I mean, you can really tell your whole worldview through the perspective or the lens of your experience with shmups if you are like really diving into it head first, because they test you so fiercely.
Oh yeah.
So my experience so far has been, do you mean just from the mental emotional level, or do you mean like what have I done with the genre thus far?
You can honestly, you can share anything and everything that relates to that.
Okay, so I started with Jamestown. Then I found all these other shmups, so I was just eating up all the YouTube content that I could obsessively. I'm like feeding my daughter, sitting on the couch,
Yeah.
watching YouTube videos about shmups, just dreaming about the next time I can play a shmup. Trying to juggle, all my life and stuff. And then I download all these games on the Nintendo Switch because that's the only thing I play on right now.
Hmm.
I'll someday come back to playing games on a PC, but that's not where I'm at right now. And let's see, I found like the Dodonpachi Daifukatsu, Mushi Hame-sama, and some of the Psycho games like Gunbird. I started
Hmm.
playing all those, and um, also the Capcom Arcade Stadium as well.
Yep.
Although none of those shmups really fit with me, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Uh, and I decided that I wanted to go for like an arcade level difficulty, arcade clear. And with that goal in mind, and then seeing I just started to develop like a thought of like, okay, I want to have like a ladder of games that I'm going to play that are always going to engage me and hopefully keep me in that flow state where I'm I'm pressing myself at just the right level to learn some new skills, and maybe playing across all these different games will each provide me a different a different way to play within the genre, with different lessons to learn.
Hmm.
So that's my outlook on choosing games. And so I've kind of scattered myself across a bunch of them with this desire to find one that's appropriate for me now, and then try to go for like a level appropriate clear for that game. So I've always been kind of grinding at Jamestown because that was my first one, and it was
Hmm.
just the goal that I set for myself. But then I would alternate with stuff like Gunbird and Dodonpachi Daifukatsu, the novice modes specifically. So let's see. Yeah, I think I have more to say, but my train of thought is kind of dying on me. Sorry.
No, that's all right. So, like, yeah, would you say, just on average, do you go through periods of, yeah, I would say maybe I'll just word it like frustration or stress or just like
Oh,
what kind of things do you go through and how do you approach those types of instances when they crop up?
100%. Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts around frustration because I'm even curious about why it is that we get frustrated. I think it's kind of funny that we have like these sorts of emotional responses to these games. But I'll start by, okay, so yes, I'll be playing a game, and I'll want to get the clear, right? Or I'll want to perform in such a way that I don't use so many resources, or I have like this goal besides the clear itself. And it's kind of like it's almost like a constraint that I've put on myself that's actually outside of the goal, right?
Yeah.
But it's rooted in some understanding that I have of like how I should be playing,
Hmm.
how I should be playing if I'm good at these games is I should be using less resources. And then inevitably I get killed by some stray bullet, or I have to use a bomb when I don't want to, or my auto bomb goes off in Daifukatsu, and frustration sets in. Maybe I'll even kind of, slap my hand on my arcade pad or whatever, because yeah, I definitely do get frustrated. But then I know that frustration doesn't serve me in any way in that moment.
Hmm.
I have to drop it. So I'm a longtime practitioner of meditation, if practitioner is the right word. And through meditation, I've learned a lot that these emotions only stay in us so long as we dedicate our mind to thinking about what it is that's frustrating us or
Yeah,
angering us. So immediately I just try to take a note of, what happened, I'm frustrated, and then refocus on the game itself,
exactly.
because playing in the moment is really the only way to stay focused and accomplish the goal, like reflecting on what just happened and fears of what I have for the future. It's like, oh, well, I just used a bomb or I just lost a life. And I don't think I can get through this game with as few lives as I have now, or as few resources as I have now, aren't useful in any way. It's all negative self talk, doubt
Yeah.
creeping into my mind that I have to just kind of allow to just evaporate from my mind, which happens the moment that I refocus in on the game. And so I think a lot of it has to do with this sort of like these expectations that I build in my mind's eye as to how I should be playing, but also as to like, I thought I understood this game. I thought I understood this scenario exactly, and then obviously I didn't. And I think that's where like the frustration hits in, is like the lost opportunity of this run, the lost opportunity of losing that resource and such. But
Hmm.
none of it's very helpful to hold on to. So it's best to just refocus on the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. It can be a pretty brutal trap for many players to fall into. I think one thing, because I know like every person who's played shmups, or at least seriously to like a certain degree, like when they're attempting to achieve something, they're not just like jumping in for 10 minutes and with no goals, but people who are attempting to improve, like they're dedicated to playing these games. I feel like we've all kind of gone through some level of that, just intense frustration and those thoughts that can kind of just prey on our minds because of the expectations we bring into the mix. And I think one thing that's really helped me is just getting excited when a fumble happens, because then it's like, oh, well, okay, if I'm
Oh,
going to clear it now, that means it's going to be like I'm going to have to just pull off crazy stuff that I might not normally risk if I had all my lives, all my bombs, all this stuff. So in that sense, it's kind of exciting to spin it that way, because then you start thinking like, oh wow, okay, I just fumbled again, and now if I'm going to clear this, it's just going to be this over the top, most insane finish that I could possibly pull off. And I actually have an
yeah.
example I can share. It's crazy. When I cleared Vasara 2, that was probably the game that took me the longest out of anything I've ever played. I fumbled a bunch and was like one hit away from losing the run, I think in stage 5 somewhere. And the stage 5 boss is just brutal, absolutely brutal. There are tiny things all over the place you can hit. And I went through the whole fight. It was just like, how did I do this? Obviously, like practice helps, but then it's like, okay, well, yeah, I still have
Yeah.
one stage left, and then the insane boss, and I got one life in that stage. I lost it. Entered the final boss fight. Didn't take a hit, and I was just like, I could have just stopped the run. I could have reset. I could have done this, and
Yep.
this. But that excitement, that spin I chose to give it, saying like, well, if it's going to happen now, it's going to be crazy. And there's no way I'm not going to see how this finishes. And I think that is a really powerful way to kind of just instantly cast those thoughts away that try and say, like, oh, well, this is a negative thing that happened. So, like, it's not worth continuing, because it's obviously that's not the case. That's just an illusion. Anyway,
Hmm.
that's my
I
ramble example. But
I love that. I actually do the same exact thing. Distractions throughout the house or whatever. I'm just the funny thing is also, because I started the YouTube channel, I'm also thinking about like, oh yeah, got to put that death in the bank because it's gonna be mentioned in my clears that someone was walking in front of the TV and I got super distracted and fell off route, or I got clipped. I never get clipped there,
yeah.
but I got clipped there, and now I'm down a resource, you know, anything like that. But it's kind of funny because just thinking like sometimes I'll even get caught up in those thoughts. My
Mhm.
mind just races. I always struggle to keep it under. I mean, I have a lot of methods to keep it under control, and I do a lot to try to, but that doesn't mean that it's not constantly fighting against me and thinking about anything but the game. Like, it's, I don't know, it's just crazy. So then I'll be thinking how I need to mention that. It's like, no, stop thinking about that. Just focus back on the game, man. Just focus back on the game.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love those saves though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that's another thing that everyone kind of will experience to one point or another. I know I'm guilty of that in like even some of my commentaries where it's like I want to point out the things that like I know I do well, especially when in the run I've recorded where I've actually cleared it. It's just like the biggest fumble you can imagine. And it's just interesting that there's that sense of like, oh, share this, because I think in ways like when we have put serious time and energy into this stuff, we maybe on some level we want people to know that like, oh, this isn't how it normally goes. Like as terrible as this looks, like we do know how to do better than that. But yeah, anyway, I'm kind of like,
there's totally that aspect of it, but also I like the idea of sharing those things because that's part of the story of this clear is like that you don't let that hold you down, that you don't let your fumbles
absolutely
hold you down. Those are important lessons that I think every player learns, is that not every clear is born from the perfect run.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Usually, well, yeah, in my experience,
no run
yeah, like,
or no clears.
I feel as though the first run is always going to be the most sloppy of anything, unless you've practiced to a point and you've put serious time, or it's just an easier game where you have a lot of things at your disposal, so it's easier to not fumble, because that can certainly happen too. But yeah, I really do believe that the time you achieve the goal, that is kind of when you are the most inexperienced you can possibly be, because any other clear you would do after the fact is already going to have much more experience behind it, and the confidence is going to be so huge. Like maybe you even experienced this. I know for myself, sometimes getting that first clear can feel like the biggest task, and then as soon as you have it, it's just like, wow, I feel like I could just do this almost every time now. There's just kind of this pressure that is released when you get that first clear, and it's really interesting how the effect it has on our brain or our minds.
Yeah, you finally realize that you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. You have the visual proof and the experience. Yeah.
It helps a lot with the doubt, but I haven't gone back to replaying any of the games that I've cleared just yet, like going for more clears. I know that's something that you do a lot with increased difficulties, but
yeah,
I'm interested in going back to games that I've cleared and just playing them on exactly the same difficulty and just smoothing out the clear.
Yeah,
even
for sure.
if I'm not playing for score exactly, I'd like to just see myself become a little bit more consistent at that exact game. I think there's still more that I could learn by going back and doing the Mushihime Sama novice original clear again.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of. It's not that I'm telling anyone to do this for every single game, but for me, when I am really into a game, I will just go all out. I will get like my clear, and then I will start doing like no bomb, no miss stuff. Just like all sorts of different crazy things, just like different approaches, just different ways where I can limit myself and challenge myself in new ways instead of just playing the game normally and clearing it normally. But I won't do that with every game. I've got to be really into it. And I think there's something really powerful when you do invest more and more time into a game, because it's like you're not just settling for the experience and the growth you get from that first clear. You're kind of sinking in even deeper to see what else you can extract from the situation. And for me, that has been absolutely instrumental and super valuable in my own progression.
And I feel the same drive to do that just even before I get the first clear, to use less resources, to pull off more swaggy dodges, to get a higher score. Like, none of my scores that I've gotten for my sort of scrubby clears have been impressive, but when I'm playing, I can't help but feel drawn to the scoring systems in these games and like trying to maximize my score to the greatest ability that I can, picking up every scoring item, etc. Like I'm drawn to grabbing them because I want to see that number just go burr.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely play Giga Wing if you haven't yet, because the whole
Oh,
screen
that
is
game
just
looks awesome.
dripping with gold. And half the time
Yeah.
you can't even get all much of it because there's just so
Oh
much.
yeah, because they drop real
Yeah,
fast in
they
that
do.
game, don't they?
Yeah, and there are sections where
Yeah.
streams are literally just gushing gold. Oh, it's so good.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's the
wild.
game that captured me most in that collection. So I will be going back to play that one.
That, Giga Wing is just off the charts incredible. I love it. It's so crazy. I've more or less gone over like the general questions, but obviously there's a lot more to dig into in terms of mindset. That's not to say we need to like force the conversation. I just ripped out my ear things. But I am curious, like, because everyone's going to have a different way to approach shmups. Not everyone is going to, yeah, let's say have the experiences that you have, or like the time with meditation that you've put into that kind of direction. So what kind of things would you say are kind of just like more easily accessible approaches for people to adopt if they're really struggling with some of these down moments that pretty much every player is going to experience at one point or another?
Ah, that's an excellent question. How do I try to share some of that wisdom? Well, one, I think it's pretty clear that focusing on the game itself has to be of the highest priority. You set yourself a goal, such as a one credit clear, and then everything that you do should be a movement towards that
Hmm.
goal that you are aiming yourself towards. Thinking about things outside of the game, thinking about what has happened that didn't go your way, and fear of the future and how you don't have the resources that you would typically want for whatever incoming event doesn't do you any good. Like you have to drop those thoughts and refocus on basically just on the screen, and on your inputs. Hopefully your inputs are just second nature, but focusing on the screen, having your eyesight exactly where it needs to be to catch all the obstacles. And even that can be a challenge. Like I said earlier, I'm constantly drawn to all these scoring items and such, but
Hmm.
there's parts of the game that if I'm trying to milk the score to the greatest ability while dodging, I'm going to get myself killed. So I have to sometimes also tell myself, this isn't the time for that. The,
Yeah.
the time right now, I need to be focusing on where are the enemies, where are the enemy projectiles, keeping that sort of like fuzzy vision in that point of the screen that's out in front of your ship or your character. And let's see, what else is there? I've had some interesting. I think I've had some interesting thoughts as well about how to prevent oneself from hyper focusing on those negative aspects, as
Hmm.
well as on resetting the game early. Trying to prevent a one credit clear. My
Yeah.
approach has been to sort of think of it as you know, if the goal is a one credit clear, you might find yourself building these constraints that are rooted in that fear. Like, I need to know miss no bomb stage one. I
Yeah.
need to know miss no bomb stage one and two, etc.
Yeah.
But unless your goal is to also do those things and have the clear, and you've set it as excuse me, you've set that as your intention, then those constraints that you place on yourself don't really do you any favors.
Exactly.
They only lend to a fear-based mindset. And I think it's important to try to see all of the sort of constraints that we place on ourselves born out of fear and come to terms with that and realize how little they serve us.
Yep. They can very, very quickly kind of just in ways dilute our focus, even though we're focusing more, or we think we are, because we've added all these other ideas, like where it has to be like, oh, a perfect first few stages or whatever. Otherwise, how am I going to do it? I think a personal example I can share is from when I was playing Ghost Blade a number of years ago. That was the first time I ever went all in with a game. And before having ever cleared it, I was attempting to clear hard mode while getting first place on the leaderboards, while also being the first to hit, I think, 4 billion or something like that, because no one had done it at that point. And what's crazy is I eventually got first place, but it came after kind of taking a step back and being like, why am I tackling 3 things at a time when I can just clear the game and then I can do the score run and ensure that I just hit the total that I want? And it's just amazing how you can think, like, you don't even necessarily realize you're doing it. You're just like, oh, well, I'm playing the game anyway, so we'll just do all these big things. But it actually keeps you from just getting your clear when you can just divide it up into separate projects. So it's great that you mentioned that, the constraints, and how if it's not in service to the goal, then it likely is actually keeping you from the goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's working against you.
Yeah.
Perhaps you have a goal of posting some score of, 5 billion in whatever game, and getting a 1 credit clear, and getting a no miss, no bomb. Are you really going to do all those at once? Maybe you can first work on doing the 1 credit clear, then go back and do, no miss, no bomb for so many stages that you think is reasonable. Then go for the higher score. If it's sensible that all of those actually link into one another and they build skills that are towards the end goal.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. I was extremely new at that point, and it's just crazy to think back about that, back to that time, because it's like, before you have even cleared it once and have the confidence and the understanding to consistently clear it without any other additional layers of things you're trying to do, it's like you don't even realize what it is you're doing to yourself by biting off that much. And I think that was a very powerful learning experience for me, because I could not tell you how many hours per day I was just grinding. And I don't even embrace the idea of grinding shmups, but at that point it was 3-5 hours, sometimes more, per day, just attempting to get these perfect first few stages. And if I don't hit this score, I know I'm not going to hit it by the later stages. It was just absolutely insane. Yeah,
and I imagine that's just going to lead to burnout.
Oh yeah, totally. Thankfully, I was able to accomplish what I wanted to, but at the same time, it's just man,
despite your poor goal setting.
But yeah, holy smokes, it was just a wild time.
Yeah. Okay, so any other I don't know, sort of. I wish I had more. Had thought about this a little bit more. It's sort of tricks to refocus into the game. I wonder just how hard of a problem it is for other players who don't have. I mean, I would relate it to meditation, but I wonder how other players do it. I haven't really spoke with anyone about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's, man, I'm not even sure what to all say, because every time I think about shmups, there's some way to relate it to life. And so in some way, I kind of feel like unless you know what someone's entire life has been like, you're never going to really know what their mindset is like when they sit down to play a shmup, or what the experience is going to be like, how they will respond to fumbles or victories, if they're even going to appreciate the little victories here and there, that I feel are very important in terms of building your confidence and just keeping yourself topped up to stay in the game as long as it's going to take. Because that's the thing with these games, you've got to have the endurance when you realize that these games are sometimes going to take weeks or months to clear. It's no easy thing to just stick with a game. You have got to have all of these different life skills and whatever else, kind of not at a master level, but you need to at least have some sort of determination, some sort of endurance, and those things need to kind of be growing alongside everything else you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to get to a point in the game where it's oh, well, I didn't accomplish this yet, out of energy now, I'm just not going to continue. And if that's kind of the breaking point, then you're never going to see the clears, because you're always just coming away from it instead of just allowing it to pan out naturally and at the pace it's going to, like however long it's going to take. Because you cannot force these games to get cleared.
Exactly.
You have to submit to them more or less. Like you've got to work with them, and you need to humble yourself to just all the learning that's involved.
And I think that's where that frustration comes from that we mentioned earlier, is like this, just the wrongful expectations that one builds for themselves as they play. You start to feel like you really have an understanding for it, and anytime the game knocks you over the head with a challenge that you're struggling to overcome, I feel like you think, I thought I knew this game. I thought I understood the systems at play here. And you have to re-humble yourself and think, I obviously do not. I am not where my understanding isn't where I think it is. My skills aren't where I thought they were. You got to play with the hand you got, and kind of get out of your head, get out of these false expectations and false understandings that you have, and just put it aside and just really just focus on playing the game. And your mind, I don't know, your mind just takes care of the rest. Your mind knows what it knows.
Yeah. And I think that's important to remember, and also to judge yourself less and less. Because in these games, let's say you've been playing for a month and you still haven't gotten past the first stage. It's like, okay, you know how far you're getting. You can kind of use that as a gauge. But there are some times where, like, I will inside and out have a section perfected, or for the last solid week, it's like, I have never once fumbled this. And then you start fumbling it. And in ways, it's easy to be like, oh, well, I don't understand it, or any of these other things. But sometimes it's just a matter of my mind and body just need to rest. It's for one factor or another. And it doesn't mean that I suddenly am forgetting things or things are getting worse. It's just sometimes you're going to not perform a certain way because you're taxed, and you just need to give yourself a bit of breathing room, so to speak. So I think that's another really important thing, is not to judge yourself, because if you are committed to progressing in a shmup and you have your goal in front of you and that's what you are going to do no matter what, then you're going to have ups and downs, and there's no reason to be like, oh, I'm messing this up all the time now, even though I know this. Like, why is this happening? Well, it's happening because it's happening, and it's probably not going to be like that for too long. You're going to snap out of it. I've seen that in my own experience, and I'm sure others have experienced that too.
Yeah. Earlier saying, that my understanding isn't where it is, or what have you, with self-compassion, you must be able to say that to yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Most definitely. Don't beat yourself up over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, as a new player, I feel myself wanting to downplay my accomplishments as well from time to time. Like the clear that I had this morning. I think I've been playing the game for 5 days now, and when I first picked up Mushihime-sama and played Novice Original, I thought, oh, this is not too bad. Like, I got this in the bag. Well, for one, there's no training mode on the port that I'm playing. I don't know why that is, that there's no it's just for the novice mode. For novice, there's no training. So you got to spend a lot of time playing stage 1 and 2, even though you might not feel like you might feel like you're wasting your time with it. But the truth be, those stages still have lessons in store for me, because I'll find myself fumbling them and then needing to bomb where I didn't think I would ever need to bomb. And well, hey, that's a lesson right there, because this game, before this, I'd played stuff with auto bomb like Daifukatsu.
Yeah.
And so it was like, this is it. I got to put my ego aside. If the bullet's coming at me and I can't dodge it, I got to bomb this
Totally.
stage 1 boss. Like, just bomb that stage 1 boss. Just get through it and don't die. So lessons to be learned there still. And also, I don't know if this is a common problem in anybody thinking that, like, I don't know, playing those early stages, wishing honestly that I could just be playing stage 5, and sometimes getting distracted with that thought, or sometimes even just thinking to myself, like, maybe I should just, I don't know, dive into this isn't where I wanted to go with this.
It's all good.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm a noob. I make these sort of mistakes.
No, I'm loving this chat. It's all good. It's all about being as
Thanks.
messy as we possibly can because that's when like the real raw stuff comes out anyway.
Yeah. I yeah. I have other thoughts on shmups, but yeah, podcasting is being on this podcast is totally new sort of experience for me. I it's hard to think about everything you or before the podcast that you want to say.
Yeah, for sure. I yeah, and no worries. Like we can always do other topics or things down the road. So you
Oh,
don't need
thank
to
you,
like
my most gracious host.
you never need to torture yourself with like, oh, I forgot to say this and that would have been perfect because it's like whatever. That's what YouTube comments are for. You can always add stuff in there too and
There we
whatever
go. You'll
else.
see
But
me in the comments.
yeah. um but yeah, I suppose we've more or less covered a fair chunk of kind of what we talked about wanting to share. So is there any like closing words of whiz that you would want to share with anyone listening, or even just kind of really anything whatsoever that you're just passionate about sharing about these games?
Mm.
Or you can just say
These
bye too.
games
That's
rock.
fine.
If you haven't played them, go out and play them.
Yeah,
They're awesome.
they.
And it
Oh
kind of
my
feels
god.
like I feel like there's so many good games coming out in this space. I don't know, and I've heard some people say that even kind of a renaissance of sorts that the genre is going through, and I feel very fortunate to be here experiencing them now.
Yeah,
So go
totally
play some
agree.
shmup.
Yeah, it's wild. I've played all sorts of genres of games, but nothing has gripped me like shmups have. Like there's just something like I've gone pretty deep into certain genres, but like when I think about shmups, uh, these games just demand so much from you. And I think there's just something incredible about how these games just more or less strip us bare in ways, and they require that we grow as individuals on all levels. And I can't honestly I'm struggling to think of another genre that even comes close to resembling that kind of experience.
Yeah.
It's something super special that I really cherish about shmups. Anyway,
100%.
yeah, we don't need to
Nothing
drag
else
this.
to add to
Yeah,
that. I agree 100%.
awesome. Okay, well, yeah. In that case, thank you so much for being here, Eric. It has been such a delight chatting and just chuckling nonstop the whole time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks to everybody who has watched, listened, or however you're doing this. Really appreciate everybody who's here. Let us know what you think in the comments. Feel free to share whatever you want to unleash upon us. And yeah, have a solid day, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.